So our guest for today, her name is Shoshanna French. She is an amazing intuition expert. Welcome to the Shelly Bell Show, Shoshanna French.
I'm so excited to meet you, Takia. Finally, I've heard so much about you. And obviously, Omi, I love you. Thank you so much for having me today.
I spent 6 months working with you. And when people ask me that, they're like, what, an intuition coach? What does that even mean? How do you even do that? One of the things that I think for me that was really, really key is that you broke it down to me like, hey, it's not spooky. We all have it. I'm just going to teach you how to use it better. But talk a little bit about, just in your own words, how you would describe your work and what you do.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that most people, when they talk about intuition, the reason they think it's spooky is because they relate to it the same way. It seems like it's this unfair advantage, like psychics or something can see into the future and predict things. And so people relate to intuition like it gives you information or has you, make a decision without having to use your logic whatsoever. And that's not entirely how intuition works. It's a tool for insight, understanding, clarity, and then what I like to say is alignment. So both you guys were talking before we hopped on about how you started your businesses and you had the idea and then you had a feeling that it was the right thing to do. That's really mostly how intuition works, which is the idea came from wherever it came from, whether some people say it came from God, universe, inspiration, your brilliant mind, or whatever. And then intuition helps you navigate maybe the how, but more the, is it a good idea or not? Is this the thing that's in alignment? So what I do is I did a course many, many years ago where this guy told me, if you want to teach intuition, this thing that you do, you're going to have to find a way to quantify it, because when you talk about intuition, people are like, what are you talking about? That sounds really, really weird. And so I, did some deep digging. I did a lot of research and a lot of just working with people, and I found a way to quantify intuition. So much like when people do Clifton Strengths or the DISC or, the Myers-Briggs, I created a test called the Intuitive Blueprint. Now, the Intuitive Blueprint, it's just like a blueprint of a house. It's not the same thing as when you build a house and you walk through it. So when you do the intuitive blueprint, it kind of gives me the sense of, or tells you like, what are the pieces of your intuition? But then you have to kind of learn how your own skill, you have to learn how to use it so that it's easier for you to apply to real life situation. But that's what I do. I train people how to not only use their intuition, but then we look at, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use this tool you have, this skill that helps you see into things and into people and really better understand how you can be not just successful, but also fulfilled and be fully yourself. So that's what I do.
That was a lot. My nervous system. I was over here. I was like, what? Because, how when people say, well, I had a gut feeling, and I think, but you don't take it as more than that. I just had a gut feeling that was going to be okay, but you don't think that maybe this is actually something that can drive you or propel you or that you can use to get to your next level.
Well, I think that was the part for me is she made it useful, right? Not made it, but the training caused it to be like, oh, like I can actually use this. There's something, from a religion standpoint that actually had me stuck on like, I'm not supposed to know too much. I got a feeling, that feeling that's like, oh, that's magical. That's like out of the blue. But I'm not supposed to actually know. Even with me journeying into Yoruba culture and, practicing that, and there's a lot of ancestral like rituals and pieces of that, and my Baba had to like really like explicitly say to me, like, you have a right to know. And I think but from a religious standpoint, it was like, oh, I'm not supposed to know. Only the like priest or pastor or whoever is actually supposed to know that level of stuff. I'm not supposed to know that level of stuff. And then I'm supposed to feel it somehow. And when a prophet brings me the information, it's supposed to be affirmed with what they said, but somehow I wasn't supposed to know. Like, I don't know, it's like a weird like dance, like a mashup of what I learned growing up and whether or not it was right or wrong to know more. Who's supposed to know more?
Well, and you can extend that to something religious, but you can also say the same goes for anywhere we put somebody as an authority. So it could be school, it could be culture, it could be, anything. It could be your husband, it could be your best friend, it could be your familial, right? Like their rules and things. So I've heard so many entrepreneur stories where it sounds something like, I had an idea, I shared it with people, and they said, I love you, but that is impossible. It's never going to work. I've heard that like 1,000 times. And then the person said, I had to realize that the authority for this choice was mine, not anybody else out in front of me. Because, just knowing who listens to your show, when you guys talk about funding, how many times have people asked for funding and gotten no, and then they find that one person who can like see it, gets it, and they fully fund?
I think that was really good because I was sitting here and while you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that most of the time funders are funding people, not necessarily the business, right? So a lot of time I say that all the time. And I think that giving entrepreneurs or anybody listening permission to believe wholeheartedly in themselves, and their ability to do what they say they're going to do, right? So a lot of times, like we think that, when you do go to a funder and you don't necessarily know, like you had a feeling, like the right funder, that feeling is enough, because that lets them know, like, listen, this person is tapped in not only to the quantitative, right, things that can happen in their business, but the qualitative, right? So they are tapped into knowing innately, what their customer wants or how to move next. And sometimes, that can be taught, but each person, I want to ask, I guess, like you can teach intuition, but my intuition is mine, right? Like what I'm intuitive about, is mine, and your intuition is yours. So I can teach you intuition. I can't teach you to have Takia's intuition. I can't teach you to have Omi's intuition. I can teach you to have your own. Am I right?
Yeah, that's such an insightful thing to say. In my industry, I guess you'd call it, in the industry of intuitives and spiritual people, they kind of make it sound like everybody's is the same. But I've taught thousands and thousands of people, and it's kind of like the blueprint versus what you build. So everybody's blueprint is slightly unique, but it comes into you as an individual. So how you were educated, whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you are a creative, an artist, whether you are business minded or not, all of those things. So yeah, everybody's intuition is completely different.
I'm into it. I'm into I'm woo woo. I like all the things. I'm reading all the things. I'm researching all the things. I'm trying the things and doing things. Not trying it too far, but you know what I mean. So staying safe. But I did not have tools for decision making. And so if there's anything that if I had to pick like a big takeaway from learning to use my intuition, it would be decision making. So I think there's tapping in, that too. Like, how do I tap into my spirit, tap into myself, tap into the world around me, and figure out what's being called for. But some of the decision making that I just didn't get from like pray and leave it with God, give it to Jesus. That didn't give me nothing to make decisions off of.
I just need a minute because that was funny. Omi, you're killing me this morning. Okay, so decision making for most people happens in the realm of data. So data driven, what I mean is not just data like numbers, but it could be data points, right? So you dated this guy in high school and he was your first love, but then he broke your heart and he had all of these characteristics. And so now you have a data point called, I can date I shouldn't date men who are prettier than me because if I do, they're going to break my heart. And now that becomes a data point. So every time a new opportunity to date someone shows up, if they're really pretty, forget it because I know how pretty men are. So we don't even realize that we have all these data points in our head, in our heart, in our thinking, but it's how our brain works. I mean, one of my like secret obsessions is neuroplasticity, which is the rubberiness of our brain, like how easily we can change our brain. And for me, intuition and neuroplasticity, like neurobiology, they're not that far apart from each other because really what we're talking about is changing how you make decisions. So how we typically make decisions, totally data driven. So the things we learned in school, what we learn is right and wrong, our morality, all of those things drive our decision making. So we collect data, collect information, whether we make pro and con lists or we, contemplate or we ask an authority, like we were talking about earlier in the segment. But intuitive decision making doesn't require any data collection because intuition is the direct knowing or understanding of something without any experience. So when Omi started BGV, when she started Black Girl Ventures, it's not like she had any experience prior to that. It's not even like she had any statistics or knowing, like data-driven knowing. She just knew. That was an intuitive
Now that's
knowing.
big. Now that there, that's a big one now because you just set somebody free, right? You just let somebody loose in the world because a lot of times they're not making a decision or they're not moving forward with this amazing idea they have because they don't think that they know enough. Right? Like, who am I to do this? I've never done this before. You know what I mean? I have no experience in this area. I just feel like I can. And sometimes, especially when you think about data driven, like how we've been taught to make decisions, right? Because we've been taught ways to make decisions. And so how we've been taught says that we have to have, like these certain things in line before you make a decision. And it seems weird when somebody does something outside of that, how we've been taught. And so you just set somebody free.
I hope so. I hope someone listening to this goes, well, what does she mean by trusting my own authority? What does that mean? Because let's be real. If we keep elevating data-driven decision-making, it reinforces some stuff in society none of us like. It means that somebody else is the authority. Well, who's the authority then? Who gets to choose what we decide and what's a good idea? I mean, I know Omi talks about it all the time, which is, women of color are the least lent to. Why is that? Is that because people aren't listening? Like you said, people don't buy a pitch, people buy people. So when you pitch, they're not just listening to what you're like, whatever the pitch is, they're listening to who you are. If we had more people in the world trusting their intuition, they would make more, conscious, present, and meaningful decisions versus making decisions that look like every other decision, every other banker, funder has ever made. So, people like Omi out in the world shaking things up because she's pointing out like people's biases about funding. And once you see a bias, then it affects your intuition. Because once you realize, for example, like that pretty men are not the only ones who break hearts, ugly men do it too. So once you know that, then your bias goes away and then you can listen to your intuition when the opportunity to date someone shows up versus your data.
Ugly. Like that, Shoshanna. That it was how deep that, homie, it was how deep that ugly was. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like ugly men do it too. No ugly ones out here.
We know that ugly can be way deeper than skin. We know that, right? Because ugly can be ugly on the inside.
Listen, beautiful on the outside, glowing, and then just ugly men. That got my spirit giggling today.
You know what? But I understand because I didn't date Mikes for a while. If your name was Mike, you was not coming nowhere near me. And then, listen, if he got a Challenger, a Charger, or a Mustang, honey, stay away from him because he is not what we're trying to do right now. If you're trying to, well, wait, if you're trying to be serious, so that's a data point. See what I'm saying? And then we start spreading our data points to other people because then Takia she pull up in the charge with the dude with the chargers. I'm like, oh, hell no, girl, don't. These dudes in these car clubs, they ain't about nothing. Right? And then she like, well, I think he's nice.
Nah, I think he's
Right?
nice. He's a good charger guy. I don't know what he's trying to
Right.
say to me.
Right. Well, here's the thing that I think I still kind of am moving through, and it is intuition around hiring and really trying to tap in and be like, is this the best fit? Because, okay, another thing that I learned through my coaching with you is asking the right question. Going back to the relationship thing, my questions were things like, is he the one? And you're like, the one what? Right? So I had to hone in on like, is this person the best fit? Best fit for what? Best fit for BGV's growth? Best fit for BGV right now? Best fit for BGV in the next 6 months? But now I used to be nervous about that though, because I would be like, I can't possibly think about the right like I'm nervous that if I ask the wrong question, or not ask the wrong question, ask the question that may not be the best question, and then I go off of that answer. So sometimes I actually would not make decisions or not use tap in. I would not tap in at all. I would not pray. I would not, because I'd be like, I don't want to, because I know that what I say will come to life. And it was scary. So I was, go ahead.
Homie, that's big because it was like the fear of making a decision. Like that's just what like you would like. I'm so afraid. The funny thing is, you're not afraid of the decision. You're afraid of the power that you have to make the decision, and that's just amazing. Like just to say that, like I'm afraid of my own power to make this decision. I'm afraid of my own authority in this. So instead of me really fully living fully as myself, I decide to kind of dim it a little bit so that way I'm not doing too much.
You know what? The responsibility to my authority, which this is where I think that people stay away from the like honing in on their own authority or making those decisions, because after you do, now I'm responsible to it. Now, I actually chose this. Oh my God, I chose this terrible relationship. Oh my God, I chose this terrible food. I'm choosing this the way my body feels because I'm not making other decisions. Like when you get down to things being all your choice, which is, in my opinion, sometimes an unraveling of things we learn through some more traditional religions, where it's like, oh no, everything is the devil's fault or it's God's fault. It's the devil's or it's God, is the bad entity or is the good entity's fault. Right. And now you get to kind of push the authority off of you. And the only authority that you hold is praying. Right. It's like, no, I got to make the decision to pray about this. I got to make the decision to fast or make the decision to go into some type of meditative state to find this out, do this thing. And it's like, it can't just be as easy as me thinking about it. Right. Like, it can't just be as easy. So do you run into people who are kind of pushing back their authority because they're afraid of the responsibility to what might, I say all the time, and I'm using Christianity in a general way. I want to acknowledge that. And I'm using religion in a general way. I acknowledge that. And so when I think about Jesus, if I were to pull the character of Jesus out of some of the anchoring feelings that people may have and just say, if this is this magical person since birth, then you best believe he probably killed some people, like on accident, or like hurt some people on accident. It wasn't even like you know what I mean? Like you turn the water into wine, for sure you done shock somebody. Like y'all was just playing and you just like, boom, tag. And another person's like laid out. And you're like, I didn't mean to do that to him. How do you punish Jesus? Jesus, I told you to stop killing the birds. Like, stop knocking the birds out the sky. What are you doing?
I'm not doing this because it's Sunday. You see what I'm saying? That's not what's going to happen here on me. That's what I don't even know how to respond to that. And so you ever just get silent? Like you ever just like the radio just now, we just went silent because this one just, I don't even know on me. My goodness. Where did you get that from?
You got it. Come on. We got to live in a reality.
No, I mean, it's a good point. You know, if you newly have this magic wand, you could accidentally, you're taking something into logic. I don't dislike that, but how do you even respond to that?
Because it's a little boy.
Yeah.
Right? Like
totally.
how we think about little boys in society, like, oh, they rough. They fighting. They whatever. But you got a strip of 100 men. You can't be fighting these little boys out here. What we gonna do?
Have you
See,
seen?
that's what I'm saying, Shoshana. This is the thing that I'm talking about. She using all of her intuition right now, and she done tapped
But wait,
in.
I'm gonna bring it home. So my point is, we are powerful beyond measure. Is this idea that if I flex the wrong way, if I flex in a way that I'm not completely aware of, conscious of, if I speak the wrong way, especially when you hone it, like I've reached a point in honing it that like I am more powerful about what I am more aware of what I say because I've reached a point in honing it. Like I've worked on this so hard across the board, holistically thinking about how do I become just a lightning rod, right? And in that case, I got to be careful where I'm striking. So have you seen people like, what have you seen in the fear of authority?
I just want to say two things that I think are important to add in this conversation since Takia and I were literally dying of laughter. The thing I want to say is that no matter how tapped in you are, we're not omniscient. And so you're just not, like we're not. And when I had conversations with people as a consultant where I'm intuitively tapping into the marketplace and their business and how it fits, and then predicted what someone may call predict something, and then it came true, certainly. But have I also sensed something, perceived something, predicted something that didn't come true? Certainly, because things change. The reason why you mentioned it earlier, and I just want to bring it back because I think this is related, which is hiring is hard in general because when you're hiring, there are so many elements to consider. There's the culture of your business. There's your own personality. That's the person you're about to hire's personality. There's their skill set, how much you want to train them, how much you want them to already be trained, how much they want to make versus what your budget is. So when I help people with hiring, which I've done lots of times as an intuitive coach and as a consultant, I am an expert in tapping into kind of all of those variables. But when you first are learning to use your intuition to make decisions, becoming an intuitive decision maker versus a data-driven decision maker, it takes time to trust yourself because, how our brain works, if you have neural pathways that say, this is stupid, why would I be trusting this? Instead, I should just trust the data because that's safer. I can't come to my board and say, hey, I have this really great idea. And they go, oh, did you run the numbers? And you're like, nope, I sure didn't. I just had a dream and my dreams come true. So we're going to do it. They're like, get her some coffee and let's go on to the next subject on the agenda.
Right. Right. I love what you said. I'm intuitive. I'm not omniscient. I'm going to tweet that. I'm intuitive. I'm not omniscient. And a lot of times the energy of the moment also could shift in the next moment, next day, or whatever. So when you get those, so what you're hearing sometimes is according to the energy of the moment. And that is so interesting. Oh gosh, I can go on about this forever because I've really had to learn how to trust myself when I have the next intuitive thought, right? Because that's the other thing is like, even though you're not omniscient and you're having the intuitive thought around the energy that is at the time that you're asking a question, as you move into the next moments, right, days, whatever, you might just have to come back and ask the question again. And you might just continuously be like, okay, well, that's interesting because, instead of like dinging yourself, like going, then, kind of self-deprecate and be like, oh my God, like my intuition doesn't work. Because you know what happened to me over the course of time? Like I've always, like I said, I always been really tapped into different spiritual stuff. I grew up Pentecostal. And, but I would be like, my powers don't feel like they're working. Like I would get to points where I'm like, it don't feel like it's working. Like, is my intuition working? And I think it's because like looking at it as this kind of like omniscient having to know all kind of thing. And it's just not that.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. So the question you had asked me before was, do I ever run into people who get scared of their own authority? Literally all the time. All the time. If I know, see, this is something I'm learning myself, something I'm working on in 2022. I'm focused on is recognizing the places where I feel really nervous or uncomfortable or where I have unknown, because I've been an intuitive trained for 28 years. So I've been training my own intuition, practicing, learning, honing for 28 years. So when I don't know something, it wigs me out. I become a complete just doofus. And I go back to the things in my brain that are the automatic trainings I had that are data from childhood. And one of those data points for me, I'm a people pleaser. So when I'm uncomfortable or I don't know, I go back to people pleasing, which if you're in business, that's a horrible, horrible choice. Because if you have staff or a board or customers or clients and you're trying to please them versus honoring what your intuition says, that can create big old heaps of mess. So the idea is to, I think the idea is to use your intuition to navigate like you would a boat. And as environment changes, the weather looks good, and then all of a sudden a storm rolls in. Okay, well, navigate again. Oh my gosh, there's a huge, bunch of sharks. Navigate again. Oh my gosh, is that a ship coming off in the distance? Looks like they have cannons. Time to navigate again. Oh my gosh, the pandemic. Time to navigate again. So instead of that word that people overuse for the last 2.5 years, pivot, I hate that word. Instead, I say navigate. I think the point maybe that you're making, Omi, is like, even when you are a lightning rod, there are times that you want to strike twice and you don't, right? So it's like, that's what the whole thing I'm saying is you're not omniscient. It's that even though I've been, using my intuition and following it for 28 years, I still F up. I still mess up. I still make dumb decisions. I still ignore it. It's not about perfection. It's about trust.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, we could talk all day and all night. We'll have to have you back. I want to have you be recurring on the show, actually, at least once a month if we can. So we have to end this show, y'all. And this has been so dope. I hope some of you out there have now like gained a better understanding of just like why you made some of the decisions you made, right? And that you weren't fly by night, you weren't tripping, but that you actually were having a feeling, a knowing, a seeing, that actually can be activated on. So, Shoshanna French, you know what? We thank you. You are now one of our good girlfriends at the Shelly Bell Show.
Good girlfriends. Good girlfriend.
All right. Tell people how they can find you or how they can sign up for the next class.
Find me on simplespirit.com, my website. You can also find me on Instagram. Please follow me. I put lots of stuff up there. Shoshanna French Stokes, my married name.
Awesome. All right. You have been listening to the Shelly Bell Show. We will see y'all right back here next week. Keep it locked every time. Remember, don't be a stranger, be a guest. Hit us up at contact@theshellybellshow.com. I'm Shelly Omilade Bell here with my co-host,
Takia Ross.
We'll see y'all next week.